it was the first thing I did really when I moved in was go down to the GP surgery. But because I'd had the travel medical card, my NHS number was on it, and so it was probably one form. And then I had to have an appointment with a healthcare assistant, and she just checked what illnesses I'd had. Because unhelpfully for my doctor's surgery, the notes from Wales hadn't all come across, and some of them were in Welsh and not in English, and that's not any use for a Warwickshire GP surgery at all. Yeah. There's really no Welsh speakers here, and so I had to kind of talk through the problems that I'd had, and they checked that all my records were up to date.
I've never had a desire to read my own records in particular, and I think it would make it harder for GPs because they'd be. I think it could potentially make quite a lot of tension if people are checking up what GPs have written about them, and then especially when it's written, sometimes you can take things the wrong way and feel like, oh, this isn't describing my condition appropriately, when actually for the GP it was helpful in the management of that patient. So I think it would be quite a tricky thing. And I've certainly never had the desire to see my own records, but I don't know what other people feel. Yeah.
So some doctors have been thinking about medical records, and they've been thinking that patients should have access to their medical records. But it's all being discussed at the moment. Do you think patients should have access to the medical records?
I don't think they should.
Because at any age, or
I don't think it should be something that should be on the internet. Because knowing what technology is like and it's advancing so much, it will get to a point where someone will have access to that information. Yeah.
And I remember when I was at A&E and they took a pregnancy test when I was at A&E as well, and he came bursting in and he said, there is a problem with the pregnancy test. I'm sat there with my boyfriend, my parents and my uncle, and he said there's a problem, and then a hand came in from nowhere and he said, oh, it's fine, it came back negative. If that hadn't, you've just announced it to my whole family who are all sat here. You have no idea how they're going to respond to that. And that's just not on. So if they can just casually just log on, and the whole point is you're meant to go and see a doctor, and you're meant to have that, know that it is private and that's what you're doing, and you just don't know how families or other people are going to react to it, and some people might not want to say anything anyways. And so that's where it gets a bit worrying, because even if it's not out there made for parents or for family or for whoever to see, it just gives more leeway for it to accidentally happen, or for something to come up like that, or for if someone's in a very pressuring situation, someone say, well, I want to see your medical records, or I want to see what was the last thing you said to a doctor, and that's where it kind of builds the wrong sort of relationships. That is meant to be a kind of patient-doctor thing, and it should be on their records, on their computers, and you need to go to them if you need them, really.
I don't think it's necessarily right for parents to be able to see it if a child's underage, because I think that there's enough safeguards in place that if a child was at risk, that the parents would be contacted about it, and the agencies would be contacted about it.
I think that, if the only difference kind of if your parent come along to you, doctor, you can ask the doctor or something. I think the doctor has to tell them or something like that. But I'm not sure how a parent would feel if kind of the child said, no, I don't want you looking at my medical record, might feel a bit suspicious or stuff like that. But no, I'm not sure. I don't think parents should be allowed to look at it without kind of permission of a doctor. But I'm not sure how that would work.
I think confidentiality is key. I think your parents, yes, they are your parents, and I can imagine people being very close to you, wanting to know, but I think some of these issues are very, very difficult to talk about, and you might not want to admit these to certain people, and I think they should be as confidential as possible between you and the GP.
And you mentioned earlier that sometimes the doctor's writing things down, and it would be interesting to see what they're actually writing about you. Would you like to see, like they're thinking of having online medical records, would you like to see and read through your medical record?
Yeah,
personally, I just find that quite interesting because they're always writing furiously and you never know what they're saying. And sometimes you can think, you can feel a bit nervous that they're just sitting there smiling and nodding, and then you can read through it and what they're writing is something different to what they're actually saying to you. So I think if you could read through it, then it'd be quite interesting to know what they're thinking, what's happening with your health.
And who should be able to see your online medical record apart from you? Who else? And the doctor?
I think that it should be quite close, so that only you and maybe very close family that you'd allow to see it. So maybe your parents for the younger children, but when you're older, that only people that you might give access to, that you personally would feel comfortable sharing it with, because otherwise you can feel that people are being a bit invasive and they can read about what's happening with you.
So parents could be able to access it if it's young children. How about younger people? Do you think parents should access it or could access it, or they would have to ask the person?
I think for teenagers they should be allowed to gain access to it, as well as the person themselves, but without having to ask the person. But after about 17, then it should be only the person themselves who can access it, and then have to let the parent gain access to it, because otherwise it can feel like they're being a bit invasive to your privacy maybe.
And who should have access to it? So the GP or hospital doctor is you, anybody else, or should it be completely confidential?
I think it should be completely confidential. Or you can, maybe potentially you can have sort of an agreement where your parents can look at it, and your parents, your GP, and you have access to it, so in the form of an agreement. But yeah, it should just be, except that it should just be like one-to-one.
And do you think parents should see it throughout your years, or up to a certain age, or indefinitely? How do you feel?
Maybe up to the age of maybe adulthood, like 18.
Yeah.
Then then they can like stop seeing it, and it becomes like yours private. Or maybe they can, definitely, 18.
And in terms of, say, children, should parents be able to see the children's medical records up to a certain age, or
up to a certain age, I believe, yeah. Because I still remember what it's like to be a teenager, and want to go to the doctor and not tell my mum that I'm going to get the pill, which is unfortunate that I didn't want to tell her at the time. But yeah, I think up to a certain age, it would be okay to see my child's medical records. Yeah,
I think it is just one of those things where they are there to be really useful for the next doctor you see, and for the 10 years down the line, if you have a similar problem, and you go, 10 years ago I had something, they can go back and check them. And my GP surgery still keeps the paper records as well as the online records, so when the computer system goes down, they just switch back to the old fashioned and update both as they go along. So I think that it's really interesting from that point of view, just to know that they keep them in such good order. But I wouldn't be bothered if somebody was looking at them for research purposes. I know when there was that big discussion in the news of, people could find out if you'd, been to the GP. But when I looked into it more, it was very much that the data would be anonymised. So as long as you weren't the only 47-year-old within 10 miles, then actually they wouldn't know anything really about you.
To an extent, as long as it was private from individuals, just anyone else, if doctors could access it for the purpose of being able to access it in regards to my issues, I think that would be great, because I think it'd be less faffing around and saying, sorry, we don't have you on our system and we can't help you, we don't know your history, we don't have your records. I think if they could instantly access your records from any part, it would make things so much easier.
The records, we're linking them, that's the main thing, but the only other thing would be to register, if that could be done straight away, so as in like you go to that new GP and they register you straight away, instead of having to come, like, instead of having to book an appointment to do it and everything and stuff.
I think it should probably have an option for you to print it and give it to someone should you wish. Perhaps not to just give them the code to go on, because I can see the point that if you see a counsellor, maybe not through the NHS but through a charity, that actually it might be really useful for them to have some insight into those medical records. And you might want to edit what they can see, but you might feel that they need to know what medication you're on or how long it's been a problem. And so from that point of view, I think it would be really useful for you to be able to have the option to give it to someone you want to. But I wouldn't necessarily just open it up for anybody, or for family members to see. I think it's very much about you choosing who sees it.
I would be interested because because we have like a book, a medical record book, and I don't really understand like most of the terminology and the jargon that they use in there. So I think being an accessible way of getting it for young people would be very beneficial, because I do feel as if young people are very concerned with these things.
Yeah, I would, definitely, because then I would remember all the things that I've had, like, for example, today, I can't remember everything that I would have liked to tell you. So if they were available, yeah, I think that would be really helpful. But I would be worried that somebody would be able to get my information online.
I can see it working, but of course there are gonna be concerns. Like personally, my parents don't really like doing stuff online, and it can be a concern for them, and they wouldn't want to have a shift towards everything on being online, because again, things can get leaked and shown to the public, and it's happened before and it's happening time and time again. There needs to be a surefire method for it to be locked and secured. No way of accessing those sort of records because they're personal and private.